Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most, frankly, unbelievable sequences of events in human history. We're going to look at how a single, completely botched assassination on a random street corner in Sarajevo managed to trigger a global catastrophe that literally reshaped the modern world. It's a true crime story full of bizarre coincidences, fatal errors, and a European continent that was basically just waiting to explode.
20 million. Take a second to let that number sink in. That is the staggering, approximate number of people who lost their lives in World War I. It was a totally devastating conflict that swallowed up the entire globe. We're talking empires falling, an entire generation lost, and the map of the world being violently redrawn in blood.
But here is the absolutely crucial point we need to wrap our heads around. That massive, world-ending destruction, it all started with just 2 bullets and 1 literal wrong turn on a city street. The contrast between this tiny, almost accidental local spark and the massive scale of the global explosion that followed, well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack for you today.
Section 1. The Target and the Plot. Sarajevo, June 28, 1914.
To really understand how this all went down, we need to set the scene that Sunday morning. And you have to picture the bizarre mismatch here. On one side, you've got Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir presumptive to the mighty Austro-Hungarian Empire. He and his wife, Sophie, are cruising into town in an open-topped luxury sports car. But shockingly, they have almost zero security. There was no army turnout, just a handful of local cops. On the other side, hiding in the crowd, are 7 assassins linked to a group called the Black Hand. But listen, these guys aren't exactly James Bond villains. They're young, untrained revolutionaries, mostly students and unemployed teenagers, actually described as sickly and skinny. And yet, this ragtag group was about to change history forever.
Section 2. A Comedy of Lethal Errors. A Botched First Attempt.
So the morning kicks off with a timeline that just quickly spirals completely out of control. At 10 a.m., the royal motorcade leaves the military barracks, rolling down the main road toward the town hall. The assassins are actually lined up all along this route. The first guy, he freezes, does absolutely nothing. But at 10:10 a.m., the motorcade reaches the next assassin, Nedeljko Chabranovic. And what happens next sets off a totally bizarre chain of events that leads right up to the fatal climax at 10:45. Okay, the crazy thing about this 10:10 a.m. attack is just how spectacularly it fails. Chabranovic hurls a bomb at the Archduke's car, but get this, it literally bounces right off the folded-back convertible roof, rolls under the car behind them, and explodes, injuring some bystanders and officers. Now, trying to avoid capture, our young assassin swallows a cyanide pill and dramatically leaps off a bridge into the river. But the cyanide was expired. It just makes him throw up. And to make matters worse, it's a hot, dry summer, so the river he jumped into, it's only about 13 centimeters deep. He's instantly dragged out by the cops and severely beaten. So the Archduke survives, and the motorcade just speeds away to the town hall.
Section 3. The Fatal Wrong Turn. A Deadly Mistake. By all logic, the Archduke really should have survived the day. After giving his speech at the town hall, Franz Ferdinand is, understandably, a little shaken up. But he bravely, or maybe foolishly, depending on how you look at it, decides he wants to visit the wounded officers at the hospital. But here is the monumental miscommunication that literally doomed millions. Nobody bothered to tell the drivers that the route had been changed.
So, sticking to the original plan, the Archduke's driver takes a right turn off the main road down a side street. Instantly, the governor of Bosnia, who's riding in the car, realizes the mistake and screams at the driver, "What is this? Stop! You're going the wrong way!" Panicking, the driver slams on the brakes, tries to reverse, but accidentally stalls the engine. And by sheer catastrophic coincidence, the car stalls directly in front of a delicatessen. Standing right there on the sidewalk, literally just stepping out of the crowd, is 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip, one of the assassins who had actually given up after the morning's total failure. I mean, Princip can hardly believe his luck. The heir to the empire is sitting in a stalled car, completely stationary, just 5 feet away from him. Princip steps right up to the footboard, pulls out his weapon, a Belgian-made FN model 1910 .380 caliber semi-automatic pistol, and fires 2 shots at point-blank range. The first shot hits the Duchess, Sophie, in the abdomen. The second hits the Archduke in the neck, severing his jugular vein. As Sophie collapses onto his lap, Franz Ferdinand desperately pleads with her. His final words were, "Sophie, Sophie, don't die, live for our children." It's just a deeply intimate, horrifying human tragedy.
Within minutes, both of them are dead. And this localized tragedy was about to ignite the entire world.
Section 4. The July crisis unfolds. Diplomacy collapses.
So how exactly do 2 bullets fired in the Balkans lead to a global war? Well, it builds through what historians call the July crisis. It's a rapid, 30-day chain reaction where international diplomacy just completely fell apart. It starts with Germany handing Austria-Hungary a blank check of support. Feeling empowered by this, Austria issues this incredibly harsh 10-point ultimatum to Serbia, blaming them for the assassination. Serbia actually accepts most of it but refuses the points that explicitly violate its national sovereignty. Because it wasn't a perfect 100% agreement, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. And then, like falling dominoes, the Great Alliances activate.
Let's pause on a really vital concept from that timeline, the blank check. This was Germany's guarantee of unconditional military support to Austria-Hungary, and this matters immensely. Why? Because without this guarantee, Austria-Hungary probably wouldn't have risked a war with Serbia, since Serbia was backed by the massive Russian army. Germany's blank check totally emboldened Austria to take this punitive, uncompromising stance that made war essentially inevitable. Section 5. The Tinderbox. Main causes.
You see, the assassination was really just the spark. To understand why Europe caught fire so fast, we have to look at the underlying structural causes of the war. You might actually remember the classic MAIN acronym from your history classes: militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. By 1914, Europe was basically a giant powder keg packed to the brim with these 4 highly volatile elements.
Let's look at militarism and imperialism first. European powers had been stuck in this massive arms race for decades. The generals had built these super rigid, fast-moving mobilization timetables. So once an army started prepping for war, the trains were literally in motion. It was nearly impossible to hit pause on diplomacy without looking weak. Couple that with imperialism, you've got wealthy nations fiercely competing with each other for global colonies, markets, and resources. So this mix of greed and hyper-military readiness, it completely primed the continent for an explosion.
Then we have the alliances. Europe was split into 2 heavily armed camps. On one side, the Triple Entente. That's Russia, France, and Great Britain. On the other side, you've got the Triple Alliance of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. This mutual defense web basically guaranteed that if any 2 nations went to war, they'd drag all their friends in with them. When Russia mobilized to protect Serbia, Germany declared war on Russia and France. When Germany marched through Belgium, Great Britain jumped into the fray. The web just pulled everyone straight into the abyss.
And finally, nationalism, the N in our acronym. This brings us right back to our assassins in Sarajevo. Slavic groups in the Balkans fiercely resented being ruled by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Gavrilo Princip and his co-conspirators were driven by this intense desire for a unified South Slav state, totally free from foreign overlords. And get this, the date of the Archduke's visit actually coincided with a historic Serbian anniversary of a battle against foreign invaders. That just added even more fuel to their nationalist fire.
Which leaves us with this pretty provocative final thought. How did a 19-year-old sitting in a prison cell after a haphazard, completely botched plot end up redrawing the entire map of Europe in blood? Gavrilo Princip later died in prison of tuberculosis, but those 2 shots he fired ignited a world that was already rigged to explode. It really proves just how dangerously fragile our global systems can be. What you should take away from this is that history isn't always just about sweeping trends. Sometimes the fate of the world literally hangs on a stalled engine and a wrong turn. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the world around you.